Hello, welcome back to Blender Stitch LiveNoding. In this episode, I will give you like a breakdown on how I created this kind of look on Susan head. So this was basically kind of very similar to default cube tutorial. So this is from YouTube, default cube, and turning anything into rock. So I think he explained everything really well and kind of like working on the topology or surface of a mesh and then turning it into like pieces. So it's kind of like creating like a 2D Voronoi across the surface. And yeah, I think this is a really good tutorial. You should watch this one first before you're watching my one. My one is slightly different. There's a bit of similarity, but okay, let me explain. So first of all, the material is from Sanctus library. So this is procedural. I think it's also dependent on the UV map, which is kind of nice. It gives you the variations on the rocks. And then let me explain what's going on. I'm using geometry nodes to do the fracturing, but also with some combinations of remesh and decimate. You might notice that I'm using decimate and planar. Okay, this is one of the secret. Without this, it won't look as good. I didn't use the dual mesh, but you might be able to put in the dual mesh somewhere. So let me show you without the planar. So without this decimate planar, it looks kind of more like you can see the grid, so it's not as interesting. So it's still doing the subdivision and fracturing, but it's all really dependent on the what modification and modifier that we put beforehand. So this is without the remesh and without decimate. So there's also kind of smoothing happening down here and up here. So I think maybe I give too much smoothing up here. But if I just use remesh and decimate, we're starting to get more interesting topology on the surface. So let me try to explain. So first of all, remesh. Okay, so remesh is doing kind of like a volume remeshing on Suzanne. And if you reduce this, the smaller the voxel size, the more the more accurate surface that you're gonna get, as we already expected. And what's interesting, however, is this decimate. Okay, planar decimate. You can use collapse. Okay, with collapse you have like triangles, and then I think it's gonna look nicer with the dual mesh as well if we put it here. So you get a different kind of pieces. Yeah, play around with that idea of, and then also you can collapse it. This usually give you like a nice 2D Voronoi kind of look. I think this is what the default cube is doing, so that's one way to do it. With the planar, so ideally we have like this modifier inside geometry nodes, but at the moment we don't have it, but it's okay, it doesn't matter, because the remesh and decimate is like the pre-processing before we modify it with geometry nodes. So you can, yeah, if you turn on Triangulate, it's gonna give you even more like a 2D Voronoi that's kind of even out across the surface. So this is one way, but planar is slightly different, and play around with the angle limit. It's kind of decimating surface, but also it's a little bit unique. So I like this kind of pattern. I believe we can actually, yeah, if we go to wireframe, you can see it's giving an interesting result. So I think it's probably clearer if I start this from scratch, but I'm thinking whether I should do it or not. But anyway, decimate, collapse, or planar. So that's gonna give you interesting topology, that you can later use with geometry nodes and this kind of a fake fracturing, because it's only doing it on the outside of the surface. Inside is actually hollow, and this is something that's something to do with the extrusion. Extrude mesh will give you hollow surface unless you merge it back with the original surface. But let me explain. Okay, after decimate, and there's this smoothing that I can turn off. Geometry nodes fracturing. So we can use the dual mesh, or we can skip the dual mesh. It's totally up to you whether you want it or not. Okay, and then the next one is split edges. Without the split edges, all will be a single surface. Okay, this is important to know. So with split edges, it's gonna split the edges of the surface. Okay, so this is interesting, and you can use this random value and boolean to kind of like whether you want to crack or like a full fracture of everything. You can actually physically drop this using Blender RRBD, rigid body dynamics. But for now, because we just want to like a nice crack on Susan head, we can do it this way. Probability 100% or somewhere here. I like this. Okay, I like this at the moment. So smooth thing. Okay, we can use set smooth here. It's gonna be pretty smooth. You can displace this further. It gives you kind of look kind of like a typical look, whether it's just like more Voronoi or planar, maybe somewhere. I think somewhere in between is gonna look nice. Maybe just a little bit of probability here. So it's whether it's cracked or fully separated from its plates. Okay, that's split edges, and then there's a extrusion here. I think just a little bit of value. You don't go too far. You can go far, but just a small value like this. You can try individual. Maybe individual also give you the look that you want. But I turn it off in this case. And then set position, and this is just an extra noise added to the rock, to the stone's surface before I subdivide it. Maybe I can actually do another one here, so with another noise texture or even like a Voronoi, and in this case with the Voronoi I can just plug this into the offset. Oh, okay, maybe we need to normalize it. So I don't know, this is just something you can try yourself, just trying to adjust an extra noise on top of this madness, like fracturing, the idea of fracturing an object. So that's totally up to you. For now, just keep it simple. We don't do that. Okay, there's a crease. I think the default cube also show, he explained why we want to use subdivision surface and the crease. Without the crease, everything will be rounded because we are subdividing the plates that has been extruded. You might like this one. It's more like pebble with a bit of crease. It's harder, and you have like harder surface, and I think this is also kind of nice. So at this point, it's totally up to you. You can go crazy with the remeshing. The interesting thing with the remesh with Decimate is that if you use a small value here, the more surface that it's gonna take consideration from the original Susan head, that's gonna be used with the Decimate Planar. You have a very interesting topology here, and also the dual mesh. Like I said, you can use this or not. It's totally up to you. And sometimes you want a harder surface, just increase the crease. So if in the nutshell, if you want to do this from scratch, I wonder if I need to use Suzanne or not. You can start with the default cube, and let's do the donuts thing. Let's fracture a donut for something a little bit different. So this is how I'll do it if I want to create a donut. Circle and save this. Fracture. If I want to recreate the setup from scratch, it shouldn't take too long. This could be 16 by 32. Okay, it's already like a donut. Pick a radius. Okay, we want to fracture this in a 2D kind of way, so yeah, remesh, right? Remesh. You're gonna get this kind of topology across the surface. Turn on smooth shading, on turn off, and then you triangulate it using Decimate. Let's check the topology. You can turn on the wireframe here. If you just decimate it using collapse, it's gonna have like a triangulated pattern, which you can use with geometry nodes. So this is where we fracture 2D. It's not real 3D, but it's pretty good, right? This is what the default cube is doing with my method planar. Okay, planar can give you an interesting surface. Maybe we don't use it with dual mesh. You see, without the dual mesh, we get this kind of like a Borg, like a cyborg kind of looking pieces. I really quite like the pattern here. I think there's if you use another calculations, you're gonna get something that's a little bit more interesting. So it's like a combinations of organic and grid. Okay, so what's happening next? Split edge. Split edge, it's gonna split everything. If we check it out using smooth, see how it's broken apart. There are many ways to do different type of like a procedural retopology. This is one way to do it, right? It's already kind of interesting, and you can use solidify. This is one way to do it, and then smooth or subdivide at the end. Subdivide. The nice thing is that the whole process is pretty fast, but we're not gonna be doing solidify here or no smoothing. Back to this guy, split edges. Remember, we use the boolean, which is just a random value with booleans. So this gonna give you value between 0 and 1 with some probability. Since we don't have smoothing inside here, I believe there's like average, but I cannot remember. Maybe just extrude it for now. Extrude mesh. This guy is unfortunately the extrude will give you hole inside. Turn off individual. Anyhow, we don't worry about that. You can always, before you extrude, you can join the original surface that's been flipped and then just merge together if you want to have like a fully solid objects after you extrude. And now we can, okay, you can subdivide mesh. You can also use subdivide surface with crease or without crease, just a little bit. Okay, so this is very similar to default cube, except that you have this remesh that you can play around with. With the default donut, actually this is BS donut. Now you can You can also use like merge by distance. This will subdivide, of course. I mean, it's gonna merge like a close vertices together, so you're gonna have something interesting already. It's gonna change the topology on the fly and keeps the donut shapes. Decimate. I think it's a bit too rounded for my taste. It's probably because of the probability, and we probably need a dual mesh. Playing around with the voxel, collapse actually looking quite nice. Planar. Maybe now it's totally now it's becoming totally rounded now. Yeah, but yeah, at this point I will use like a material from Sanctus, for example, and oh, okay, there's this edgeware nodes, which is a super interesting shader to use. Let me try wall and floor, granite, try this surface, assign the material on this guy, and use set material with this guy, plug into the group input and select the material from here. Oh, okay. The calculations on the Mac, if you are using Eevee, it's gonna be slow on the shader. It's actually a lot faster when using cycles, which is pretty interesting. Okay, now it's cycles. Calculation is much faster. Shift A, we can use area light, put it there. Shift T, point into the object. Size, power. I probably miss one of the step. Maybe I should bevel the stone or something. Voxel. Oh, adaptivity is also interesting to use. Just have a little bit adaptivity. Alright, so we have this shape. You can also use bevel. I have a feeling, yeah, I think the set extrude subdivision, I think the noise here, I need to set position and the noise texture with vector mask on the color. Like this on the offset. Okay, this will give some control, some additional detail on the stone, so it's not fully straight. Okay. This is the strength of the noise. So we get this fracture look. take a look at the shader. This is the shader from Sanctus. You can purchase this. I really like, there's actually one module here. You can add this node. This is gonna give you some kind of edge wear. So the shader can go into the edge wear, and the output of this will give you some additional edge. Which is kind of beautiful, and it's kind of eroding the surface of the stone. I think one if you use like a nice shader with displacement, you're gonna have like a more convincing stone surface. But that's basically the process. I think I explained everything that I want to show you. If we use cycles, turn on ambient occlusions. Oh yeah, this some of the shader from Sanctus might be slow on the Mac, but if it's using Eevee, if you use cycles, it's gonna be faster. You need to turn on cycles and also the M1 processing. Let me go back to original, turn on cycles, turn on GPU compute, and I think should be using M1 now. So turn on the noise, should be a lot faster to render. Alright, so that's basically what I want to show you. Again, you're gonna probably want to watch the default cube tutorial beforehand. I just want to show you, there's another way that you can add on top of that Decimate Planar. And if you really want to, you can also use particles and explode. If you use particle, scatter some particle points and then use explode, you can further separate the plates of the fracture. All right. So thanks again for tuning in, and so I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.